All right, so for the past probably 3 days or so, we've been talking about standard form of a circle, which is this equation right here, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So remember that our h is like our other x, our k is like our other y. Okay, so as you can see, we group all our x's together, group all our y's together. All right? Now, today we're going to talk about how, when it's given in a different form, to put it in standard form. So the two skills that we're going to need, the first one is factoring. Okay, and this is specifically factoring perfect square trinomials. Okay, and perfect square trinomials is a number or a factor that both factors are the same. Okay, so what number would multiply to give me 25 and also add to give me 10? 5 and 5. So the way you would write that factor would be x plus 5 squared. Okay, do you notice how this right here is very similar to this right here? Okay, it's in the same format. That's what we're going for. Okay, so what number multiplies to give me 49 and adds to give me negative 14? So we would write that as x minus 7 squared. Okay, and last one, number 3. What multiplies to give me a positive 9 adds to give me negative 6? 3 and 3? Negative 3 and negative 3. Okay. Now, the second skill we're going to need is how to complete the square. Okay, and so I have a tip box up here. It's not really a tip, but it's actually how you do it. So to find C, you're going to take your B, divide it by 2, and then whatever that number is, you square it. Okay, so that's how you're going to find C, or complete the square. So for number 4, B is actually 6. We would take 6, divide it by 2, and that would give us, and then we would square 3, and it would give us 9. Okay, the reason that C is 9 is, what number multiplies to give us 9 but also adds to give us 6? 3. See how that works out? So we would be able to factor it. All right, number 5, our B is negative 20, so we do negative 20 divided by 2, which would give us negative 10. We square that, and it gives us 100. So C would be 100. Okay? And then, what number would multiply to give me a positive 100, add to give me negative 20? Negative 10. So do you notice that the factor in the first one was a positive 3, what you got when you divided by 2. The factor in the second one was a negative 10, what you got when you divided by 2. Let's try number 6 and see if it works out the same. So if I take 4, my B, and I divide it by 2, I get 2. And then I square 2 and get 4. So if my C is 4, what number multiplies to give me 4 and adds to give me 4? 2. Isn't that number we got when we divided by 2? Okay, so what you're going to realize when we start doing it is we don't actually have to factor, because it gives us the factor every time we divide by 2. Okay? So let's try number 8. So they gave me this equation right here, x squared minus 6x plus y squared plus 4y equals 3. That is nowhere close to my equation, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So we're going to get it in that form by grouping our x's together and then grouping our y's together. Then we're going to do the same thing we did earlier and complete the square. So in my x's, my negative 6 is my b, so I do negative 6 divided by 2, and it gives me negative 3. Then I square negative 3, and it gives me 9. So if I add 9 on my left-hand side, I also have to add 9 to my right-hand side. So you put it in both blanks, one on the right side, one on the left. Now I want to complete the square for y as well. So I take 4, I divide it by 2, and that gives me 2. We square that and we get 4. Okay? Now, remember, our factor of this is already given to us. So we know our equation is going to be parentheses x with something in it squared plus parentheses y with something in it squared equals r squared. Now, our factor, our number that goes in there, we already have. It is the number you get when you divide by 2. So for my x's, what did I get when I divided by 2? -3. That's what goes in there. For my y's, what did I get when I divided by 2? A +2. It's right here, y'all. Just read it off the board. Okay? And then for our r squared, we take everything on the right-hand side, 3, 9, and 4. We add them together, and that gives me 16. Okay, so looking at that equation, what would my center be? +3, -2. Okay, and what would the radius be? Radius is 4. Remember, you take the square root of this. Okay? So if I graph that, we'd go right 3, down 2, and then from there we'd go out 4 in every direction. And remember, when you're doing your circles, make sure they're rounded and they don't look like a square. Okay, they don't have to be perfect, they just have to be rounded. Yes, Eli?
The equation, like the x minus 3 and the y plus 2,
Mm-hmm.
I just take, and we did 6 divided by 2 and the 4 divided by 2, since it's the same numbers, are going to be the same every single time?
Every single time. So you don't really have to factor this, you just look at the number you got when you divide it by 2. Okay, so let's look at number 9. So in number 9, they gave us this equation up here. They grouped the x's and they grouped the y's. And now we have to complete the square so we can factor them. So to complete the square for the x's, we take -8, divide it by 2, and that gives us -4. We square -4 to get 16. So we put 16 on our left-hand side, 16 on our right-hand side. We do the same for y. We take -10, divide it by 2. That gives us -5. We square that to get 25. So we put 25 on the left-hand side, 25 on the right-hand side. Okay? Then we factor, or write our equation. We know we're going to have parentheses x with something in it squared plus parentheses y with something in it squared equals r squared. So what did we get for the x when we divided by 2? A -4. What did we get for the y when we divided by 2? A -5. Okay? And then Grissom, how do I figure out what r squared is? We do what? So we add up everything right here. We do -40 plus 16 plus 25, and what does that give us? 1. Very good. Now, from this equation, what would my center be? 4, 5. And what would the radius be? What's the square root of 1? 1. Okay, so we go to 4, 5, so go right 4, up 5. And then from there we go out in each direction. Okay, is everybody with me so far? Do I have any questions? Okay, let's look at number 10. So in number 10, what is different about that one? Okay, it only has one x. It has an x squared. So do you think I'm going to need a parentheses for that or to complete the square? No, we're just going to bring down x squared, and then I'm going to put plus, and then put my parentheses y squared equals. So we don't actually have to complete the square for x. We only have to complete the square for y. So we're going to take what number and divide by 2 for y? 14. We divide it by 2 and get 7. And then we square 7 to get 49. So I put 49 on my left-hand side. I put 49 on my right-hand side. Okay? Now from there, I want to go ahead and figure out what number goes in parentheses with the y. A positive 7, because that's what we got when we divided by 2. What is a negative 45 plus 49? 4. Okay, and so what does that make my center? Okay, it would make it 0 because there's no number with x, comma, negative 7, and my radius would be 2. So to plot that, I wouldn't go right or left at all, but I would go down 7, and then from there I would go out 2 in every direction. All right, how do y'all feel about those? Okay, now I want to show you what it's going to look like on your test because this has it guided. Your steps are guided. If you will flip to the back and look at number 12, this is what it's going to look like on your test. Okay, so it doesn't have all the parentheses for you and it's not guided. So in number 12, the very first thing that I would want to do is go ahead and group my x's together and put my blanks, group my y's together and put my blanks. So I'd put parentheses x squared plus 14x plus blank, close my parentheses, plus, then I'm going to put a parentheses y squared minus 6y plus blank, close my parentheses. Now, if I have 2 blanks on my left-hand side, how many should I have on my right-hand side? 2. So I need to put negative 49 plus blank plus blank. Okay? Now from there, we're going to fill in our blanks. We take this middle number right here, 14. I divide it by 2, and that gives me 7. Okay? Then I square 7, and it gives us 49. So for the x, I put in 49. If I do it on the left-hand side, I also have to do that on the right-hand side. Now let's do the y's. So what number am I halving for the y? Negative 6. So I take negative 6, divide it by 2. That gives me a negative 3. And then I have to square that. So what is negative 3 squared? 9. So we put 9 in for the y here, and we also put 9 in for the y here. Okay, so what I explained while you were not in the room, Khalil, is that when I write my equation, so it's going to be parentheses x with something squared, parentheses y with something squared. The number that goes in the parentheses is what you got when you divided by 2. So here for x, when I divided 14 by 2, I got 7. So this would be a positive 7 in this parentheses. And then for y, when I divided by 2, I got negative 3. So we'd put in negative 3. Okay? And so that's how we factor it. Then to get my r squared, I'm going to take this right here, negative 49 plus 49 plus 9, add it together, and that gives us 9. Very good. Yes?
When you find your center, do you have like 2 negative numbers?
Yes. So then to find the center is going to be the opposite of what's in the parentheses. So my center here would be negative 7, because it's opposite of this, and a positive 3. And then to find the radius, we take the square root of 9. What's the square root of 9? 3. Okay, and then we would graph that by going left 7, and up 3. And then for the radius, what we would do is we'd go up 3, we'd go right 3 from there, we'd go down 3 from there, and we go left 3. And then you kind of connect them, make sure they're curved. Do not make a square, because it should be a circle. Okay, do I have questions before I do another one of those? Okay. Let's try 13 then. So 13, the first thing I want to do is group my x's. So what would my x parentheses look like?
X squared plus 4x plus blank.
Uh-huh. X squared plus 4x plus blank. Okay. Then I put plus, what would the y look like?
Y squared minus 10y
Plus blank. Okay. Equals 20. Plus blank plus blank. We need 2 since we have 2 here. Okay. So to find the x, what would we do here? 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. We square 2, and that gives us 4. So I put a 4 on my left-hand side, put a 4 on my right-hand side. I'm going to do the same for y. I take negative 10, divide it by 2, and that gives us negative 5, and negative 5 squared is 25. So I'd put 25 on my left, 25 on my right. Okay? Now for my equation, I'm going to have an x in parentheses with something squared, and I'm going to have a y in parentheses with something squared. What goes in the parentheses with x? A positive 2, because that's what I got when I divided by 2. What goes in the parentheses with y? Negative 5. Okay, and then to get my r squared, I do 20 plus 4 plus 25, which is 49, right? Okay, so my center is what here? Negative 2, positive 5, and my radius is 7. Okay, so then we graph negative 2, 5. We go left 2, up 5. And then from there we go out 7. In every direction. And then make sure your circle is somewhat rounded. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it cannot be a square. Okay, so do y'all feel good about completing the square so far? All right, flip to the other sheet for me. And look at number 1. Can somebody please raise your hand and tell me what is different about that equation than the ones we've been looking at? Katie? Okay, it's set equal to 0. Do y'all notice anything else? Marcus? They're not grouped together. Very good. Okay, so these are not grouped together and it's set equal to 0. So what we're going to want to do is group it together, and what should not be on the left-hand side? 40. Okay, 0 is on the right-hand side. 40 should not be on the left-hand side, so we're going to move it to the right-hand side. So let's go ahead and group our x's. What goes in parentheses with the x? X squared plus 10x plus blank. Okay, so that takes care of my x's. Then I have to put plus, what goes with y? Y squared plus 8y plus blank. I don't need this 40 over here, so when I move it over, what happens to it? You get a negative 40. Very good. And how many blanks should I have on my... Plus blank, plus blank. Now from here, it's just everything we've been doing, right? So we take 10 divided by 2, and that gives us 5. We square 5, and it gives us So I put 25 with my x here, and I also put 25 on my right-hand side. Do the same thing for y. So 8 divided by 2 gives me 4, and 4 squared is 16. So I put 16 here, 16 here. So when I write my equation, that gives me x, and then what goes in the parentheses with x? Plus 5 squared, plus, and then we put y. What's in the parentheses with y? Plus 4 squared, okay, equals negative 40 plus 25 plus 16 gives me, whoa, negative 40 plus 25 plus 16 should be 1. 25 plus 16, 41, and then a negative 40 gives me a positive 1, okay? So then what would our center be? Negative 5, comma, negative 4, and my radius? 1. So to graph that, I would go left 5 and down 4. And then from there, I would go out in every direction. And make my circle. Okay. So is grouping them when they're out of order very hard? Okay, so let's try one more. So in number 2, what would my x's look like when I group them? X squared minus 12x plus blank. Okay, plus when I group my y's, what do I get? Plus blank. Very good. Okay, and then this 31 needs to move to the other side. When it moves to the other side, it becomes negative. So I get negative 31, and then I have plus blank, because we have 2 here. We have to have 2 on the right-hand side. So we take negative 12, divide by 2, and that gives us negative 6. Negative 6 squared is 36. So 36 goes with my x here. 36 also goes here. Then we do our y's. So we take 4, divide by 2. That gives us 2. And 2 squared is 4. All right. Then we write our equation. So what number goes in parentheses with x? Negative 6 squared. Plus what number goes in parentheses with y? Plus 2 squared, okay? And then we do negative 31 plus 36 plus 4, and that gives us 9. Okay, and so my center would be 6, comma, negative 2, and the radius would be 3. So we would go right 6, down 2, and then out 3 in every direction from there. Okay, so are y'all good with rearranging? All right, so flip to the back for me. And somebody read out loud what that says at the top.
Before completing the square, the leading coefficient.
Okay, so it says, note, before completing the square, the leading coefficient must be 1. Okay, so what does leading mean? Okay, in front or first. Okay, so if we're talking about a leading something, where do you think it's going to be? In the front. It's going to be the first thing. So the leading coefficient is a number. It's the number in front of x, okay? So the leading coefficient in number 5 is 2, okay? So to make that a 1, what do you think we do? Divide everything by 2. So we're going to take every single piece and divide by 2. Okay? So the first one would give me x squared plus y squared minus 4x minus 6y minus 3. Okay? Now from there, we want to write the equation. Is it in the order that I need? No, so I want to group it into the order I should. So if I group my x's, that's going to give me x squared minus 4x plus blank plus y squared minus 6y plus blank. What do I do with this 3 right here?
Add it.
Move it to the other side. Since it's negative, we add it, so we get a positive 3. And then how many blanks should I have on my right? So plus blank plus blank. Okay? So I'm not actually going to write it out this time. What is negative 4 divided by 2? A negative 2. What's a negative 2 squared? 4. So I add 4 here, add 4 here. What about for y? If I take negative 6 divided by 2, it gives me, and negative 3 squared is 9. So we'd put a 9 here, 9 here. Okay? Now we're going to write our equation. So what did we get when we divided our x by 2? A negative 2 squared plus y. What did we get when we divided our y by 2? Negative 3 squared. Very good. Equals 3 plus 4 plus 9 is 16. So what would my center be here? 2, 3, and my radius would be 4. So I'm going to go to 2, 3, put a point. Then from there I'm going out 4 in every direction. And graph that circle. Okay, is changing the leading coefficient difficult? Okay, well then let's do one more. So for number 6, what would we divide everything by? 5. So divide every single thing by 5. And that gives us x squared plus y squared plus 8y minus 9 equals 0. Now, when I group my x's together, what happens? Okay, it's just x squared, right? Because there's nothing else. So that means my equation down here is going to be x squared plus parentheses y with something in it squared equals r squared. Okay? Now, when I group my y's together, what does that give me? Y squared plus 8y plus blank. Okay, and what do I do with this 9 right here? Move it to the other side, and you get a positive 9. How many blanks should I have on my right-hand side? How many? 1, because we only have 1 here, so it would be plus blank. Now, if I take my y and I divide it by 2, it gives me 8 divided by 2 is
4.
Okay, and 4 squared is
16.
So we put a 16 here, 16 here. Okay? Then we write our equation. Courtney, turn around. What number do we get for y?
4.
Okay, positive 4, because that's what we got when we divided by 2, and 9 plus 16 is 25. Okay? What would our center look like here?
0 plus 0 negative 4.
0, negative 4, very good. And our radius? 5. So to go to 0, negative 4, we wouldn't go right or left at all, but we go down 4. And then from there we go out 5 in every direction.